Senator Dastyari. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Education, Senator Payne. I refer the Minister to Mr. Pyne's claim that the Better Schools plan was a, quote, Gonski. Then Mr. Abbott's claim the coalition had a unity ticket with Labor on school funding. Then Mr. Pyne's claim all agreements made by Labor would be renegotiated. And then finally the statement by Mr. Abbott and Mr. Pyne that Labor school funding agreement would be honoured in full. Minister, how can any parent, teacher or student trust anything this government says on education?
Order. The Minister. Order. The Minister representing the Minister for Education, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Dastyari for his question. It's very interesting that Senator Dastyari should raise in the chamber the question of how one could trust a government, because the irony is not lost on me, Mr. President. The irony is not lost on me. It was, after all, Mr. Shorten, who's now the opposition leader, who, as Minister for Education, chose to remove $1.2 billion from the education budget before the last election. And it's also not lost on me, and it's also not lost on me, Mr. President, I think I referred to this earlier today, but I'm very happy to go back to it, that it's in fact Labor Premier Jay Weatherill from South Australia who, notwithstanding having signed up to the previous government's education agreement, is now cutting $230 million from the South Australian education budget confirmed by their Parliament's Budget and Finance Committee. So if the senator opposite is concerned about trust, could I suggest that he take that up with the Leader of the Opposition and Premier Weatherill?
Senator Dastyari.
Mr. President, I ask a supplementary question. The Coalition promised the Australian people a careful and consultative government. Is the chaotic and shambolic performance on school funding what you, Minister, had in mind?
Order. 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 When there's silence, I'll call the Minister. When there's silence on both sides, now, when there's silence on both sides, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thank the senator for his supplementary question. Speaking of chaos, I think Mr. Pyne referred to it quite effectively yesterday when he referred to the absolute wreckage that Mr. Shorten had left behind in this portfolio area. We know that what he did was to cut $1.2 billion out of school funding. We know that of the jurisdictions across Australia, Northern Territory, Western Australia and Queensland had never been part of their so-called national funding plan. We were actually told that Victoria and Tasmania had signed up, but they hadn't. We were actually told that the Catholic system had been signed up, but it wasn't. So it was a complete mess. To use Senator Dastyari's words, it was chaotic. So what Minister Pyne has done is spent the last 11 weeks consulting with the states and territories and consulting about—
Order. Time's expired. Order. On my left, Senator Dastyari is on his feet. Wait a minute, Senator, you haven't got the call. Senator Dastyari.
Mr. President, I ask a supplementary question. Can the Minister confirm that the decision to backflip on schools funding was made by the leadership group and only discussed by the Cabinet after the Prime Minister's announcement? Minister, which ministers and which members of the Prime Minister's office were included in this decision, because clearly the Cabinet wasn't?
Order. Now, when there's silence on my left, I'll call the Minister. When there's silence on my left, we'll call the Minister. When there's silence on my left and my right, we will call the we will call the minister. The Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I can confirm that this government has reinstituted the $1.2 billion that the previous government took out of funding. I can confirm that this is a truly national agreement, Mr President, and I can confirm that the previous government was incapable of achieving this.